Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southern Hemisphere's #1 Newcastle United podcast, the Toon Under Pod. I'm going to do right now what I always forget to do, and I'm going to say please like the video if you're watching on YouTube. Give us a rating if you're listening to the audio, and give us a subscribe as well. We're keen to get the numbers up a bit, and I always forget that bit. So there you go. Give us a like. The likes on YouTube are actually a good way of getting the algorithm up. So we're all for that. I am Jack in Brisbane, and today with me is Craig in Mackay. How are you, Craig?
I'm good, mate. I'm clamming for some football back in action. I'm missing the Premier League already. I don't know about you two.
Yeah, you've still got another 2 months or something to wait. It's a bit of a wait, isn't it?
Season seems like it finished months ago.
It does, yeah. Especially because the last game for us was like nothing game as well, and it didn't really matter. So.
Yeah.
And we've got Keegan, who's down in Geelong, who's watching the cricket. How are you, Keegan?
I'm colder than a mother-in-law's kiss at the moment. It's absolutely freezing down here. I think the top of 11 today, so I'm all rugged up. Sort of, if you see my head, if you see my head drifting off the cameras, something's happening at the cricket, and I'll just have a quick look over. But excited to be here, and I think we're going to have a very fun pod tonight.
I was out for a run this morning myself, and I had to put my tights on. It was cold.
Well, I had a beanie on. I had a beanie on this morning with my run. I reckon about 5 minutes in, I took it off because I was starting to overheat. So I had to shove it down my pants.
All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a look at, because Newcastle have obviously qualified for the Champions League group stages for the third time in their history, and third time in the Premier League era. So we thought we'd have a little look at the previous teams, or sort of broadly the previous squads that have qualified for the Champions League. So we're going to look at King Kev's entertainers, even though it was actually the season after. It was the season when he left halfway through that we actually qualified for the Champions League, because second place only got us place in the UEFA Cup when we came second in '96. So it was actually half Keegan and half Kenny Dalglish's team that qualified for the Champions League in '97. But we're going to have a look at the entertainers generally, because they're really good, and we've got to add some of them in. And then we'll have a look at Sir Bobby's team in 2001, 2002 that qualified as well for the Champions League. And again, we might drift into the squad for the following season, because there were some good players in that squad. And then obviously we're going to look at Eddie's high-flying Champions League marks of 2023. A whole 2 decades after we last qualified. I'm still excited about that. It's still a bit of a kind of pinch me statement, isn't it? Have you got used to it yet, Keegan, that we're in the Champions League? We're allowed to talk about it now.
No, I haven't, but when I eventually get my shirt with the logo on the sleeve, it'll probably start to hit home. But I think I'll get my shirt after the Champions League group stages are finished, judging by some of Craig's shopping experiences with Castor in the last week.
Yeah,
it's pretty standard. Really calm.
Yeah, pretty standard from Castor, but at least he hasn't asked for a refund that they said they were going to give him, and they've never given him it, because that's what happened to you, isn't it, Keeg?
Yes, it is. So I should actually get a shirt for free, because they've still got about $160 of my money. So I might even ask for the pro version just to get a full value for my refund.
Robin twats.
Not good.
No.
But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We are here to look at the squads. We've each picked a combined 11 from those squads. So we're going to build up, and we're going to do that at the end. But we're going to have a bit of discussion around the players that might have got in, might not have got in. We've had to limit it a little bit, because as much as we all love Darren Peacock, and as much as we all love Clarence Acuna, and Paul Kitson, I don't think there was much chance that they were going to get in the combined 11. So we've had to kind of limit it to players who probably who would get in. So we're going to start with the goalkeepers. Probably one of the more straightforward categories, I would say. But I'm going to flick them up for the audio listeners. I have got slides here that are going to be flicked up on YouTube, and we've also got the appearances that each player made, Premier League appearances that the made for Newcastle. And with the goalkeepers, we've got clean sheets, and for the outfield players, we've got goals and assists. So Craig, you do the honours for this one. We've got 3 candidates who could be in our combined 11 for the Newcastle Champions League teams.
Yep.
Go through them.
We've got the late, great Pavel Cernicek. Played for the club between 1990 and 1998. Obviously, we weren't in the Premier League at the start of his Newcastle career, but he made 99 appearances in the Premiership and had 34 clean sheets. And following on from him, we've got Shay Given, the only Irishman who doesn't know where Dublin is. And he made 35 appearances and kept 86 clean sheets. And then we've got Nick Pope, who obviously is our current number one goalkeeper. Be interesting to get his number one shirt next season, to be honest. 37 appearances, only missed one due to, was it the red card that he missed the...
No, it was the Chelsea game. Last game he got rested,
Isn't he? Yeah, so he only missed one game last season due to having an operation on his finger, but 14 clean sheets from the entire Premier League campaign.
When Pavel actually came back and he came back to the club and he was like the third choice goalkeeper, and he'd grown his hair out a little bit and he had some flecks of grey in there and he looked pretty good. And then it was when Glenn Roeder was there and we played a game against Spurs and we were winning quite comfortably towards the end. And all of a sudden, Pav came on. It was so funny. It was just like, it was the middle of the season and, like there wasn't anything major riding on the game, but it was like, it went into absolute carnival time at St. James's Park and Pav came on for the last few minutes. It was just crazy, but it was so good. It was absolute party time. But what stands out to you there, Keegan, of these three goalkeepers? There's one kind of stat there, one goalkeeper, isn't there, that stands out?
Yeah, it stands out. Someone making 355 appearances for a club in... I know transfers probably weren't as prevalent back then as what they are today, but for someone to make that many appearances for a club's rare in any time. So it's a monumental effort and it's a bit of a no-brainer. This one.
It is, isn't it? It is. I think when you make that many appearances, he's made 10 times as many appearances as Nick Pope. And obviously Pope's older, so he's not going to get anywhere near that. But when Shay Given left, Craig, it was a bit of a cloud, wasn't it? It was a bit of a cloud. He was just sick of it, wasn't he? He was sick of it. It was joking, yeah. So he was just sick. I think he'd been here for 12 years. He'd been through. He was there for this kind of the end of Keegan, start of Kenny Dalglish. Lived through all the good years of Bobby Robson, and I think by 2009 he just had enough, hadn't he?
You don't blame me, that, to be honest. I think it was the game at Liverpool at St. James's where we got thumped 5-0, I think it was, something like it. And he's just sat there on his goal line, close to tears, and thinking, I literally can't carry this team anymore, because he was pretty much the main player in that squad. There was so many players who were underperforming, and nobody blamed him for leaving either, because he had the opportunity to go to Man City. They were on the club on the rise, and we were on the club on a massive decline. And all good for him for going out there to try and make something of it. I remember when I was actually at St. James's when Papi Cisse made his debut, and he was in goal for Aston Villa. And I was at the Gallagher end, and when Cisse scored that goal, all of Gallagher end was chanting "dodgy keeper," and giving his fans around and just applauds the Gallagher end. And I'll never forget that. As obviously he knows it's all banter, he knows what the club's all about, and he is an absolute club legend and thoroughly deserved.
I forgot about that he was in goal for that game, actually. Yeah, I totally forgot that. But it was the Liverpool game when Rafa was at Liverpool and Steven Gerrard absolutely tore it apart. That was one of the best performances I've seen against Newcastle. And Shea at the end just ran off. He was just embarrassed, I think, because even though he conceded 5 goals, he was still our best player by a mile. They just absolutely battered us that day. I think we knew then the writing was on the wall, and like I said, nobody really begrudged him his move. But he was brilliant through the Bobby years, and he actually got dropped for some of the Champions League games because Steve Harper played against Juventus and a couple of others, I think it was as well. So, but he was such a great servant, and I don't know if anyone will make that many appearances for us anytime soon, goalkeeper or otherwise. No. What about that goal? What about that goalkeeper top that Pav's got on there though? It's a bit special in the key.
I was gonna say if we could merge Shay Given's body into Pavel's gear, it'd be like the perfect goalkeeper, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's such
was
a nice.
Kenny Dalglish that signed Shay Given? It was, wasn't it?
I think it was like in his very early, because he came in 97 January. So
Aye.
yeah, it was. He was playing for Sunderland, and he was at
He
Blackburn, I
was.
think, as well. Yeah.
He got a championship medal then. I remember he got interviewed. He turned around and says, "I've no idea where the championship medal is. I've lost it. Don't care about it." Which I think is great to say. Obviously, being a Newcastle player, but if he was signed by Kenny Dalglish, which I think was the case, that's got to be his best signing by far when you think about it, easily.
Yeah, there was another one that he signed as well that did really well and made a lot of appearances, and we'll talk about him later because he'll be coming up as well. But Keegan's already said you can't really argue with Shay Given for this, in the combined 11. Would you go along with that, Craig?
Easily, aye. No question.
I think if Pope had another maybe 3 or 4 years, then you might start. And if he plays as well as he has this season, you might start pushing him a bit for that place. But you really can't argue with that, can you? Shay Given. There'll be no surprise that Shay Given's in all of our combined 11s when we get to it later. Right, let's have a look at the right backs then. Keegs, over to you for this one. Walk us through them.
Okay, we have Warren Barton, made 158 appearances with 4 goals and 14 assists. Aaron Hughes, who made 205 appearances, 4 goals, 10 assists. And Kieran Trippier, who so far made 44 appearances, scored 3 goals and had 7 assists. It's very. We've been kind of lucky, I think, over the years that we've always seemed to have a pretty good goalkeeper and a pretty solid right back. If you think Habib Beye wasn't that bad for a right back. Even like, I know he might get some stickers, a bit of a whipping boy, but he wasn't that bad. So it has been a position where we have been quite solid over the years. But I know he's only been here 18 months, but yeah, Kieran Trippier, he's a special player, man. He's a very special player.
It's funny given what we've just said about Shay Given and longevity and appearances, and then we've come to this position and we're all gonna say, yeah. He's only played 44 games and 38 of them were this season. He started every league game this season. 7 assists. Yeah, you've got Warren Barton and Aaron Hughes both played over 150 games. Craig, what's your kind of thoughts on the right back position for this from these 3 squads?
Well, Warren Barton was just a quality, solid player who I think made his England debut when he played for us as well. So again, Mr. Dependable, you could call him that. Aaron Hughes, exactly the same. He never really put a foot wrong, and he could play either side as well. But I think he mainly played on the right. Another solid quality defender. Came to our youth academy, if I remember rightly, as well. Which again, we don't get many of these days. But yeah, Trippier is just head and shoulders more consistent, more of the type of player that we want to see in Newcastle. He's not really known for his defending, more of an attacking style. But when he does defend, he's still quality at it too as well. He's 33 now. I think he's surpassed both of those players at the age they were at the club as well. And his fitness level, if anything, is just getting better and better. So yeah, it's Trippier for me.
Yeah, me too. Like we've said on this podcast many times, like you can't think of a right back who controls football matches the way Trippier does it. There's periods of games of like 10, 15 minutes where he just controls it, which from a right back is something pretty special. And he's only small as well. He's only 5'9" or something. So to control it the way he does, I know that's big compared to you two, but he's still to control it the way he does is amazing. Go on, Keeg.
Yeah, no, I also think something that you can't quantify in stats is his leadership and stuff on the pitch as well, and the way he can help control emotions amongst the players in sometimes heated situations and things like that. Like I know there's not a metric or a measuring stick to use for that, but he's one of the best leaders. I know it's only been 18 months as well, but he's definitely one of the best leaders we've had at the club since he's joined.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Warren Barton and Aaron Hughes were good players. Warren Barton, particularly, he got a few caps for England when he was here, and he had a good relationship with Keith Gillespie down the right-hand side. He eventually went to Derby when he was getting on by then, when Bobby was there. And then Aaron Hughes was pretty inexplicably sold to Aston Villa by Graham Souness. when he was doing that stupid thing where he's breaking up that whole squad. But he was dependable as well. But I think in terms of quality, in terms of pure ability and leadership, like you said, Keeg, I don't think you can look past Kieran Trippier, even though he's only been here for 18 months. He's just got that experience. He's got he's won La Liga. He's played in the Champions League quite a few times. He's played in the Champions League final for Spurs. He scored in a World Cup semi-final. He's still getting in the England team now at the age of 33. So, and he's probably just had his best season ever as well for anyone. So he could be our right back for another few years, and hopefully he is. And I think there'll be no arguments when we look at our teams at the end. Right, let's have a look at left backs. This is probably a bit of a different scenario to the right backs. I'll go through these. We've got John Beresford, who joined in 92 when we were on the rise under Kevin Keegan. Left in 98. He played 137 games, 2 goals and 9 assists. Olivier Bernard made 102 appearances between 2001 and 2005, and he got 6 goals and 5 assists. And then Big Dan Burn, who's so tall that his head's been cropped off this picture. From 2021 to present, of course, Big Geordie Dan Burn, 54 appearances, 1 goal and 1 assist. Left back's been a bit of a not a problem position because there's some decent players there, but when we look at the players we've had in other positions or through the pitch, it's probably going to be a bit of a more difficult one to pick for this one. I'll say now that I've gone with Beresford because I think he was a staple in that entertainers team. Even though by the time we actually got in the Champions League, he was kind of on his way out, and he went in 98. But he was really good, good attacking left back, and he had a good relationship with Ginola. I remember Bernard obviously getting knocked out by Laurent Robert when he kicked the ball into his face at Leicester. That's probably the best thing he did. But yeah, he was a decent player as well, and he still lives in the Northeast. Actually, he used to run pubs around Durham, and then he got involved with a pub in Blythe, and he was involved with Durham City Football Club as well. So he's still in it around the Northeast. And Dan Burn, you can't argue with what he's done this season. Well, you can. Some people have, and some people have scapegoated him, but I'm not going to argue with him. I think he's been brilliant, out of position. And he'll always be remembered as part of that unit that's got us back into the Champions League. Craig, what's your kind of thought process on this one?
Beresford, quality player. There's just something why I haven't included him in this, which I can't necessarily put my finger on, because he never done anything wrong as a player. I just don't think he was as good as I remember him to be, whether that's just because it was so long ago and I don't really have the footage to go back and watch him. But my pick out of those 3 is Ollie Bernard. Reason I've gone for that, and this will become more apparent as we go further through this, I think his partnership with a certain French left winger was devastating on its day. I don't think there was many better on its time. And the fact he's got 6 goals and 5 assists, and he had 2 spells at the club, didn't he? Because we flogged him, I think it was to Southampton. Then we brought him back, but he wasn't fit enough. Then he retired. If I remember rightly.
Something happened with his contract as well, where initially we signed him from the French club Le Havre, and we had to kind of pay a nominal fee or something through a tribunal because we'd kind of pinched him. And then he like something happened with his contract and he wasn't happy about it. And then he went to Southampton, but he never really hit the heights. His spell at Newcastle was probably the best of his career.
Yeah,
and I think he would play for Rangers for a bit maybe, and he did come back, I think, but he just wasn't fit. Yeah, and then he had to retire when he was quite young.
Dan Burn, I think it's just 1 season too short of him potentially being considered in this starting 11 for me. He has been quality. Yes, he's had a few dodgy moments during the season. But again, he's played out of position, so we can't forget that one. It's not his natural way on left back. But I tell you what, I am very disappointed in the fact Matt Ritchie's not included in this lot.
Matt Ritchie, yeah. Or Jamal Lewis.
If anything, he's the GOAT of all left backs, isn't he? But of those 3, Ollie Bernard is my pick.
I'm going to have nightmares forever about that. It was that game against West Ham, I think it was, a few years ago, and it was a defensive Kraft, Clark, Dummett, Ritchie and Lewis or something. It was terrible.
Oh, don't say that.
Yeah,
that's horrific.
Keegs, what's your take on these left backs? I've already seen our team, so I know who you pick. So you don't have to give your rationale yet if you don't want. You can wait till later. But yeah,
I'll go now. I went for Dan Burn. So there's three of us who've all gone different. So that's how hard it is. For a couple of reasons, like he was a part of our best defensive result in Premier League history. So you can't go past that. I was probably a little bit young to remember John Beresford, and especially during these early years when he was sort of at his best, we didn't get much footage over here in Australia, so it's hard to judge someone who you haven't seen much of. We did get to see Olivier Bernardo for a bit during them years through, like Foxtel had the games and stuff like that, so we were lucky enough to see that. But yeah, I just went with Dan Burn. Maybe it is a bit of recency bias as well, but
yeah,
I'm not ignoring the fact that he played a big role in our best defensive season ever. So I don't think that can be ignored. And although he's not as prolific or as threatening from set pieces as a bloke who's 10'7" should, he's still a nuisance in there, and he still causes carnage, even though he's not a part of it directly.
And he scored a key goal in the Champions League hunt as well against Brighton as one league goal. And it's the story, isn't it, with Big Dan Burn? Like, he was at Brighton, he was 30. He never thought he'd get to come and play for Newcastle. And then when he got that call, then he got that call on almost deadline day a few Januaries ago. What a moment that must have been. And then for him to come in and play how he has been fantastic.
Yeah.
He's always going to be very fondly thought of. And he's going to be part of the squad for next season. He'll play in the Champions League for Newcastle, which, what a story for him.
It's crazy. Goes from watching it to playing in it. Like,
I know.
It's
it's crazy. Right, let's have a look at the centre-backs then. There's 6 to choose from here. Oh, Darren Peacock is in there, although I'd be quite surprised if anyone picks him, even though he played quite a lot in the Keegan years. Craig, you can talk us through the centre-backs.
Yep, so we've got Philip the Bear. From 94 to 99, 96 appearances, 8 goals, 10 assists. Probably has our most famous Premier League goal in history, I would say, with that chip over Schmeichel. Then we've got Fabian Schär, 2018 to present, 125 appearances, 10 goals, 6 assists, which is cracking for a defender for 10 goals. Jonathan Woodgate, only short spell with the club from 03 to 04, 18 appearances, no goals, no assists. But I think that appearances might be wrong.
I think it was 28. I think it was 28, yeah.
Then we've got Demi's best mate, Nikos Dabizas, from 98 to 2004. 130 appearances, 11 goals. He got that winner against the Mackems at the Stadium of Shape, so he'll go down in folklore for that. 0 assists. Darren Peacock, as mentioned just before we came on, probably scored the most famous goal that didn't cross the line ever, again in that 5-0 win. From 94 to 98, 131 appearances, 1 goal, 5 assists. And the current GOAT of our centre-backs, I'll probably give away who I've chosen there, Sven Botman, who is still current squad. 36 appearances, no goals and 0 assists. You only missed the 2 opening games of the season, I believe it was.
He was on the bench for the first one and he came on. And then, I can't remember which ones he missed actually. But yeah, he's pretty much been a stalwart on the team since the Big Dan Burn went to left back. Some of these goals and assist stats for the defenders are pretty ridiculous, aren't they? Philippe Albert got 8 goals and 10 assists. I know he was he basically wasn't a defender, was he? He was like a striker who was playing in defence. Just the reason.
Left his runs late.
Yeah. There was a goal he scored against Man City, I think it was, where he did a mazy run and stuck it in. It was absolutely brilliant. And obviously the chip against Man United. And even Big Fab, obviously, he scored some good goals as well.
You only does thunder bastards, Fabian Schär, doesn't
I was going to say, not many shit ones in them teams.
Yeah, but who would have thought, 12 months, 18 months ago, we'd be sitting here talking about Fabian Schär potentially in a combined Newcastle 11 Champions League qualifying team.
No, he was destined for the pages of history, wasn't he?
What's your picks then, Craig? You've already said you've gone Botman. What's your thoughts then behind Botman? Because he's only played 36 games for the club, league games.
It's his debut season. He's 22, 23 years old, whatever he may be. He looks like he just absolutely belonged from the first moment he got on that football pitch. I've never seen a debut season where you've come in from a farmers league as well, to be honest, because the French league is far from competitive, especially compared to the Premier League, and just took it to like a duck in the water. He commands the back four. He hasn't scored any goals or assists, but he's come very close this season. But yeah, I can't think of a player who has had such an impact on the back line at such a young age and come from a foreign league as well. I think it's outstanding, and he's only going to get better as well. He really is.
Yeah, he's class, isn't he? He's got Champions League experience as well with Lille. He played against Chelsea. I think they got through the group stage, and he played Chelsea in the knockout, and he didn't look out of place there. Still hasn't been cuffed for the Netherlands, I don't think, unless he got.
He didn't come off the bench.
Yeah, he's been on the bench this break, but he hasn't actually got off the bench, has he yet? It's a strange one. It can't be too long before that happens, and then he'll be there forever, probably, like he's going to be with us at the back forever. Keeg, what was your thought process around the centre backs when you were thinking about this?
So I kind of went reverse. So I went like a process of elimination, and then the last two guys I sort of fell with. So unfortunately for Darren, he was the first one out. And then Dimmy's godfather, he was the next he was the next one out. Philippe Albert, I mean, he was known a lot, and his stats back that up for more of his attacking flair as a defender rather than his actual principal job, which was defending. And then so it was down to Shah, Woodgate, and Botman, and I ruled Woodgate out just purely because of the fact that I don't think he played enough to sort of warrant. And don't get like he was great the games he played, but for me, he just didn't play enough. So, and then it sort of tied back into my thought process with the other two was this is our best defensive season ever. So it makes sense to have the four blokes who are a part of it. And I mean, look, I agree with everything. Sort of Craig summed Botman up. Everything that I was going to say about Botman, Craig summed that up perfectly. So, and then with Shah, I mean, we had a really good manager who basically found him, brought him on the cheap, and he was a really good player. We had someone who, for some reason, didn't think he could play, and then we've got another manager who knows what he's doing, and he's a really good player again. So, I think that says a fair bit about the bloke in between the two good ones we had. So, and he could go down as one of our best buys ever for the price he's paid or the price we paid and the job he's done in the circumstances. It's an unbelievable bit of business for the club. Yeah,
it was 3 million, wasn't he? Something from Deportivo.
Yeah,
what a signing. And he, like I said, he was on his way out before. And it's funny. It's an amazing amount of players that's happened to who were good when Rafa was there, and then there was shit when Steve Bruce was there, and now they're good again now that Eddie Howe's there. It's almost like coaches have an impact and an influence on their players, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
even 3 mil, like that was in the time where transfers were starting to get a bit out of control with the price. Like it wasn't back in the day, like 3 million now is worth this. Like it was cheap at the time, and it's got even better every year since it happened.
Especially when you consider we've just chucked 7 million on a 16-year-old or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's bargain, absolute bargain, that one.
There's definitely a theme with some of these players that they're an absolute snip. Shea Given as well was only $1 million or something, $1.5 million. The amount of appearances you got out of him.
Well, so you could even say Trippier was. We got way unders for Trippier. Burn. I reckon if we sold Sven Botman now, he'd be. You could nearly add 15, 20 million on his price. If we bought him for 35 or whatever it was, you could sell him for 50 million easily. Like yeah. Like we've actually been really strategic with some of our best players in the transfer market.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's good scouting, isn't it? Good scouting, good recruitment. With the defenders, then I went purely on ability, so I went with Botman because I think he's probably the best defender we've had in the Premier League era. And then I went Woodgate as well because he was brilliant when he was on his game. Although I take the point that he didn't play enough, and he got sold a bit unexpectedly to Real Madrid, who decided to come in and buy him, and then he had an absolute disaster there. But he came back to the Premier League after that, and he had his injury problems, but he was really good for Spurs for a period of time as well. And I think if he wasn't so injury prone, he would have probably kept Terry and maybe even Rio Ferdinand out of the England squad at times, out of the England team, because he was that good. He just couldn't get his body right. But that's it's not a bad defensive sort of setup to choose from. Maybe not the best quality players, but still good servants. Dabazas, like you said, Craig, the goal against Sunderland will always have a place in the Geordies' hearts for that one. And that lovely celebration with his big Dimmy rug. That was good to see as well. So that's the defence done. Let's move on to the midfield. This is where it starts getting a bit exciting. It starts getting a bit interesting now. There's going to be a few little contentious discussions around this stuff, I think. Craig, no, you did the last one. Keegan, you do the honours and you talk us through this. This is central midfield we're going to do first. Central midfielders.
Okay, we've got an abundance of talent here, and Kieran Dyer. So we'll start off with Gary Speed, who made 213 appearances for the club, 29 goals and 14 assists. Rob Lee, who made 251 appearances, 33 goals and 29 assists, which is phenomenal numbers for him as well. We've got everyone's favourite player at the moment, Bruno, who's made 49 appearances so far with 9 goals and 6 assists, which is a pretty good achievement, I think, for more of a defensive number 6. We've got the freshly minted Brazilian international, Big Joel Linton. He's made 136 appearances. That's a lot more than what I thought he made. 16 goals and 7 assists. Then we've got Kieran Dyer, and I can't be bothered reading him because I don't think anyone's going to pick him anyway. And rounding off this midfield 6, we've got David Batty, who made 75 appearances for 3 goals and 4 assists. It's a Cox Plate field for those who are racing enthusiasts who are watching or listening tonight. Now, I need to preface mine by saying I've gone for a 4-3-3 formation, so similar to what we play now. So my midfield 3, I guess, was Bruno. I think he's probably the most talented midfielder that we've had. I've got Rob Lee, who is an absolute workhorse, which I think you need someone who's just going to roll his sleeves and pull his socks up for 90 minutes and get stuck in. And for a bit more of an enforcer, just to keep everyone in check, I've got the new freshly minted Brazilian bulldozer himself.
Big Joe.
Yeah.
Well, Joe Linton's definitely a midfielder now, isn't he? Like he's made 136 appearances, but a lot of those were up front when Bruce was there. So it was like it wasn't him. It wasn't him. What we've seen the last 18 months is him, especially this season. What a player he's been.
Goodness.
So your midfield's got that bit of guile, isn't it, with Bruno? It's got because Rob Lee was more, he was more than just a hard worker. He was quality.
Oh no,
goal scoring midfielder. He was kind of like a bit like what Frank Lampard was later on. He could score. Chipped in with his goals.
Yeah, it was out of him or Gary Speed, I must admit, for that position. But I just think I just sort of went with Rob Lee. His numbers were a little bit, not that I didn't know anyone's numbers when I picked this side, by the way. I just went off gut feel. So I just felt Rob Lee was that little bit of a bit better player. And like we had some great memories with Gary Speed, and he sort of late runs into the box and bloody net busting headers and stuff like that. But yeah, I just went with Rob Lee.
Rude Hullett disagree with you because he tried to sack Rob Lee off.
He disagrees with me for half of this side, I reckon, when he sees this. I know he watches. So
he does watch.
Yeah, he's a big fan of the show.
It was when he was in a power struggle with Shearer, and he was trying to kick all of Shearer's friends out. So he tried to kick Rob Lee out, and then luckily he got sacked, and the rest is history. But Rob Lee came back in, got an assist in the FA Cup semi-final last season when Bobby came against Chelsea. And then, yeah, I think there's a decent shout for all 6 of these players. I know you just kind of shot on Kieran Dyer a bit, and he's a bell end. Let's not be beating on the bush.
That was part of the reason.
Yeah, like that's why we don't like him, because he's a bell end. And like even now, like he goes on the news and on Sky, and he'll just talk shit like as if he didn't play for us for 8 years. You know, he should know a lot better than some of the things he says. But when he was fit, he was a good player, even though he's a bell end. He was
There's some great numbers. And remember, he was injured for a fair bit of time as well. Like, them numbers could actually be a lot better than what they are. And they're still pretty good.
Yeah. He didn't do it himself any favors at times, but he was electric when he was fit, and he was linked with signing for Leeds in the early 2000s when they were good as well, and he would have fitted in there. And then David Batty as well, who was only with us for a few seasons, but
felt like longer, I reckon.
Yeah. He was such a good defensive midfielder. He would just go around like that photo of him there with the blood pouring down him. But the time he throttled Nicky Butt, that was pretty special. He went around kicking people, but in like a fair way sort of thing. And he was must have been horrible to play against in the midfield.
My favourite memory of David Batty was when Neil Lennon headbutted Shearer's foot. And all you see is David Batty walking up to Lennon, and he literally picks him up and drags him off the pitch to continue with the game. I thought that was fantastic. That's David Batty in a nutshell. Love it.
David Batty all over. And I love the stories about him now as well, because he hated all of the limelight. He wasn't interested in the celebrity lifestyle. He didn't care about the money, you know. He just wanted to go and play football. I don't think he liked football as well. I've heard people say that. And like I've heard Shearer say that no one's ever heard of David Batty since he retired. Like he's just gone. He's disappeared. He's just living in Yorkshire somewhere, minding his own business. And that's probably pretty rare. Like he missed a penalty for England in the World Cup '98.
Yeah.
And I remember people like were saying, "Oh, you must be devastated," and he just wasn't that bothered really. Like he's just like a proper salt of the earth bloke from Yorkshire, you know. Like he was just like, yeah, whatever. What happens. He was a fearsome competitor, though. I've actually gone similar to you, Keegan. I've gone with a 3 midfield as well because of I think that's the modern way. I think that's the way that this team would succeed. And I've gone with Rob Lee and Bruno, and I've actually gone Gary Speed as well. I think that's a good balance in there with the left footer and the right footer. And we know that we're like our big strong men as well, and Gary Speed was certainly that. He could rise, and we wouldn't have problems scoring from corners if he was around, that's for sure, with Trippier's crosses. So Gary Speed's got into my team. Craig, what have you gone for your midfield?
Well, to be fair, there's 2 players here which I'm kind of disappointed are omitted from this. One of them is Czech Teore. I think he deserves a good mention. His name isn't there.
He wasn't in a Champions League squad, though, was he? That's the problem. None of the Pardew people.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But yeah,
he was amazing as well. Yeah,
he was. But my 2 midfielders, I've gone for a 4-4-2. I've gone for an old school traditional. I've gone for Bruno and Rob Lee.
Bruno and Rob Lee in a 2.
Yeah, so my idea is Bruno pushing higher up the pitch, how we now want him to be as of season coming. And Rob Lee probably towards maybe the middle of the back end of his Newcastle career, just sitting back, feeding off the scraps, putting the ball back into play, and maybe hitting the Thunder Bastard from 40 yards like he did against Coventry in that game all those years ago. Love Rob Lee, probably my favourite number 7 in Newcastle history. I don't think anyone will ever top that. Man's an absolute legend of the club. The Platinum Silver Fox, or whatever you want to call him now. He is an absolute hero of mine. He's also the best person in the world who doesn't know where Middlesbrough is either.
That was the story, wasn't it? That Keegan told him that Newcastle was closer to London than Middlesbrough was, and he was right in a way because it's quicker on the train. Because no one wants to go to Middlesbrough, so it's hard to get there on the train. All right, let's have a look at the wingers. Again, this is going to get really quite exciting now. Let's do the right-sided wingers first. I'll go through these ones. We've got Keith Gillespie from the Keegan teams. He was there between 95 and 98, 107 appearances, 12 goals and 10 assists, which are numbers not too dissimilar to Philippe Albert, actually. We've got Nobby Solana, who had 2 spells with us. His best spell was in the Bobby Robson Champions League team. 232 appearances with 37 goals and 52 assists. He would be a fantasy football manager's wet dream these days with numbers like that. He was brilliant. And then we had to put Miggy in there as well because he's been mainly on the right-hand side for Eddie's Mags. 76 appearances, 13 goals, which all came in a 2-week period in the season just gone, and 10 assists. There you go. There's the right-handed right midfielders or the right wingers. Craig, what were you thinking for this one?
Straight off the bat, I mean, it's pretty obvious. I think everyone's going to pick out of these three. It's Nobby, isn't it? His stats are just stupidly good. I mean, when you look at Almiron, he gets a bit of stick for not scoring or creating as much, but his goals and assists per appearances are far better than what Keith Gillespie's well. No, he's got one more goal, same amount of assists, but he's got 31 games less. So that's pretty decent. But Nobby's stats are just so far ahead, it's not even worth debating on this one, in my opinion. It's just a shame he's wearing that awful kit that I can't stand. Should be in a black and white one. Or that time at Leeds when he lifted his shirt, had Merry Christmas, Newcastle underneath it.
Yeah.
I love that one. That was it. Our one beat Ellen Road. Was it 4-3 in that game? Can't remember.
That was the game. Sure was.
Yeah.
2 days before Christmas.
Yep. Yeah, I should have had that 4-1 there. But yeah, Nobby's stats are just head and shoulders above everyone else. It's stupid.
And you had a good stat about him earlier as well. Before we were talking just before it came on, and there was a good stat about him. What was that one?
He is the most substituted player in Premier League history.
Most substituted off player.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he played for Villa and West Ham as well, didn't he? In between, he went to Villa, then he came back to us, and then I think he went to West Ham after that, maybe.
Yeah, he didn't play much there, I don't think.
Didn't he end up playing for Hartlepool or something? I'm sure he played for Hartlepool. He did something crazy.
Surprise me.
But he's a bit underrated, really. Like, still, like, not by Newcastle fans, but I think generally, like, I don't think the Premier League really understood how good he was and what a talented, special footballer. And here's the other one I was talking about earlier when we were talking about bargains: Fabian Schär, Shea Given. Nobby Sloan's got to be in there. He was only a couple of million when he signed, and then he had a bit of a slow start, and he didn't play that much when Dalglish was there. And I don't remember him playing at all when Hullett was there. He must have played a bit, but by the time Bobby got there, he was a mainstay in the team. I found this position difficult because I'm not actually using a right winger as such. I'm using more of like a forward. And I think Keegan, so I didn't pick any of these in my team. Keegan, you might be similar with that one.
No, I went for Solano on the right in my front three. But another sort of interesting bit of trivia. I think he's the best Peruvian trumpet player in Premier League history as well. So there's another string he can add to his resume.
I think he's definitely got that one nailed down. I'm trying to think of another Peruvian who played in the Premier League.
I can't even think of one.
Struggling.
Yeah.
I know.
I reckon he used to ring people up when they had landlines and they'd pick up the phone and it'd just be him playing like a trumpet on the other end.
There was a stat, and we've obviously had more Peruvians in the Premier League since, you would have thought so anyway, but he was the first ever Peruvian to score a goal in the Premier League as well.
Yeah, there was. I think Wigan had one at one point, but I can't remember who. But I think Wigan did have one. I actually met Nobby Solano once in Flares, in town. I was wearing a Union Jack bowler hat, and I was wearing some big sparkly glasses, and I was drinking a whiskey and coke, and Nobby was there, and it was not long before a game actually, and I went up to him and said something like, "Oh, I hope you're not drinking alcohol or something." And he was like, "Oh no, I don't drink. It's all good." So. Yeah, he was a nice man.
He'd be one of them players that the cool kids say the streets will never forget. Like if he was playing in this era, he'd be like, "Oh, the streets would never forget Nobby Solano," and then show like he's outside of the foot goals and crosses and all that sort of stuff. That's the type of player I reckon he'd be in today's market. Yeah,
and I think he went back to the club not long ago. I think they invited him back.
Yeah,
I don't know if
was he with the? Yeah, he was. I've seen him in. I reckon I've seen him in training. Oh no, he done some stuff in America. I think with when Eels and that went over. To do the promotion for this preseason tour. I reckon he was over there with the fans. They got up. They always going to get up, but they were watching one of the games together in one of the bars.
Yeah,
it might have been the Leeds game actually.
Yeah, it was Atlanta,
the early kickoff game or something like that. Yeah.
Didn't you also play with everyone's favourite drug-fueled midget Argentinian as well? I'm sure you played with Maradona.
Ryan Fraser's not Argentinian, is he?
Yeah,
he played with Maradona as well. I'm sure he did. There's photos of them playing together on the pitch. I was at Boca Juniors.
He was at Boca Juniors, so yeah, and maybe Maradona was still kicking about in the mid '90s. Well, he was because he played in World Cup '94, so maybe they did play together. Yeah, he learned a few tricks. All right, let's have a look at the left wingers. This is where it gets exciting, really exciting here. So, who went last? Craig, did you go last? Keegs, you can go on this one. Left wingers.
Okay, we have. This may just be called the French.
The French.
The sort of French Maverick Renegade section. This is of the podcast. So we have, first of all, Laurent Robert, who was from 2001 to 2005. He made 129 appearances, 22 goals, and 29 assists. David Ginola, who was from 95 to 97. He made 58 appearances, 6 games, 12 assists. And our current French Maverick, Alain Saint-Maximin, who come to us in 2019, who's made 111 appearances for 12 goals, 19 assists, and 777 stepovers as well. So, I didn't pick any of these three in my team. Unfortunately, I went my own sort of Maverick Renegade style in honor of these three gentlemen as well. But if I had to pick someone, if I was a traditional Craig stuck in 1992 in a 4-4-2, I would have went Laurent Robert. I just think he was a better player. I know Ginola would play with us, but I don't think his best stuff was with us. I think his best stuff was after he left. I'm not Alan's biggest fan either, so I couldn't pick him. So it was Laurent Robert. If I was going to pick someone, it was going to be him, but I didn't pick any of them.
Craig, take us
as mentioned earlier on, I picked a certain French left back who partnered very well with Laurent Robert. I think the connectivity those two had on the pitch was fantastic. And Robert was a bum off the seats type of player, wasn't he? When he hit the ball stayed hit. Some of the free kicks, some of the goals he scored were just absolutely sensational. You think of both of Ginola and Maxi, they both scored decent goals. But Laurent Robert, I mean, you look at that Spurs game where he staged his old goal of the month competition. He had that thunder bastard from the floor. And then on the volley, was it from some type of clearance? And I think
Shola. I think Shola might have won the header or something and it looped up. Casey Keller was in goal and he absolutely
Casey Keller just like, what am I supposed to do? He just literally hit with absolute venom and just destroyed the back of the net. But I also remember, I think it was his debut goal again when we beat Man United 4-3 at St James's when he rifled that free kick past Fabian Barthez. And that was just his arrival. It's like, I've arrived now. He had to tear shit up, and that's exactly what he's done. And his numbers are backed up. Maxi's quite close in terms of appearances, but he's not going to match his goals or assists when he gets to that number. He's just not as consistent as what Robert was. And also, game, if you think of the set piece ability in my squad so far, I've got Robert, I've got Solano, and Trippier. I mean, if you got those three down for set pieces, I mean, I think Rob Lee may be taking on Tooney's time, but those three are deadly from set pieces on there too.
I'm surprised a bit that Ginola only scored 6 goals. He definitely did play probably his best stuff for Spurs, but he was good to watch, obviously. But I think he was 28, 29 by the time he signed for us, so he'd had a whole career in France at PSG. And nobody really knew who he was when Keegan signed him, because he didn't get the French football on the TV those days. And he kind of wowed everybody, I think, in that team. But yeah, Robert, I really, really struggled over this. I actually woke up last night worrying about this and thinking about it. Because I couldn't have him in my team because of the formation I've chosen. Because I don't think he would fit. I don't think he would fit into the left forward, like the modern left forward position. Because he didn't really do the work required. But when you've got a left foot like that, you don't really need to. I think if I'd had a 4-4-2, he'd be the first on the left wing. he's the player that I think of when someone says, or when you talk about who's your favorite player, or he was at that time. That was my heyday of following the club with my first season ticket and everything. And I've spoken about this before as well, but he took a free kick against Southampton once where he was about 40 yards out, 45 yards out, and he was in the middle of the goal. He just kicked it hard, really hard, and it just kind of swerved around a bit. It went into the middle of the goal, and the goalkeeper still couldn't save it. The goalkeeper fell over, and it went in, and it almost ripped the net out. But I've never seen a left foot like that. It was just, it was something else. So he's a player that will always just be so. But I remember at the time as well, though, he got quite a lot of grief for not tracking back. It was a bit like in that Ben Arthur kind of mold, another enigmatic Frenchman where
maximum mold.
Yeah, in the Max, exactly. Max is exactly the same. He can do amazing things, but he can also do terrible things, and he doesn't fit into kind of probably what managers want him to do as such, unless you get someone like Bruce who just says go out and do it, But in Bobby's team, Robert had a specific role on that left-hand side, and it was basically just to feed Shearer or to shoot from distance and score. And that's what he did.
Shoot on sight or pass it to number 9.
Absolutely, and that's what he did. So he was such a good player. So, all right, there's been a little bit of a debate there over the left wing position. Let's get to the good stuff. Newcastle might not have had the best defenders over the years. The midfield has been good, but maybe not top level. But look at this lineup for strikers. I'm going to take us through this. I'm going to take us through Peter Beardsley, who had 2 spells with the club, starting in 1983, came back to Keegan's Entertainers in 94 time. And yeah, he was brilliant. He was such a skillful player. And he was 35, I think, when he came back, 34 or 35. And he came back and he was brilliant. He was brilliant. So he's an option here. Everyone's going to pick Shearer. Let's not mess around here. 10 years, 303 appearances, 148 goals, and 39 assists in the Premier League. That's almost a 1-2 record in what was a lot of the time a shit team.
And Shola was his strike partner.
With Shola. Yes. Sometimes he had Shola, sometimes he had Lualua. Yeah, crazy. Les Ferdinand had an even better goal per game ratio, 67 appearances, 41 goals, and 14 assists over 2 seasons. Craig Bellamy, who did a lot of Shearer's running for him in Bobby's team, 87 appearances, 29 goals, and 13 assists. So he wasn't as prolific, but by that time, Shearer couldn't run much, so Bellamy did all his running for him. And then we've got Callum Wilson, 75 appearances, 38 goals, and 10 assists. A bit like with Miggy, he scored about half of those goals in about a 3-week period in the season just gone. But he's been a good player for us. And then Alexander Isak, who's only had 22 appearances, he's scored 10 goals and he's got 2 assists. Obviously, he's been injured for quite a bit of his debut season. There's no point in pretending that we're not all going to pick Shearer, so let's just get out of the way now. Shearer's probably the best pure striker in Premier League history. His record's probably going to go, unfortunately, to Harry Kane if he stays at Spurs. Unless he wants to come to Newcastle and he can break it here, and that wouldn't be too bad. But yeah, that's some lineup of strikers there, isn't it, Craig?
It's phenomenal, isn't it? We're a team known for scoring goals and conceding goals. But when you look at the likes of Beardsley, Shearer, Ferdinand, Bellamy, Wilson, Isak, you could pick any 2 of those, and there's not a wrong answer, really. There just isn't. But obviously, the big man from Gosforth himself, he is the standout figure in all of those players, and he easily gets my pick.
And he's had 2 Champions League campaigns as well. So he had the one in 97, and then obviously the one in 2003 as well. So there's no arguments there, is the Keegan. Who have you chosen to partner with Alan Shearer up front in your team?
So I stuck true with my 4-3-3. So I think apart from sort of Wilson and Isak is more of a traditional striker. I know Isak sort of drifted out on the left sometimes to facilitate Callum playing in through the middle. But I actually went with Beardsley. I think he'd be a real handful, sort of cutting in on the left-hand side with his skill and pace and stuff like that. So he was sort of my left winger, left-sided striker. I just got one sort of issue with Sir Les Ferdinand. How is he a Sir and Alan Shearer's not? Like, I don't.
Shearer's a god.
She was above a Sir, yeah. She was a deity.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a sort of a Newcastle thing where they don't want anyone from up north. Like I was watching the cricket the other night and there was bloody Sir Alistair Cook. Like, give us a spell. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, Sir Les was a nickname. I think he might have got that at QPR and it just kind of stuck with him. I don't think he has actually a Sir, is he, Craig? I don't know.
Nah. He might be an MBE, like member of the British Empire, but he's definitely not a Sir.
Yeah. But yeah, he's probably going to miss out on all of our teams, but he was amazing striker. Him and Shearer up front in that season. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
God, you wouldn't want to defend against them, would you?
Maybe we could have like Sir Les Ferdinand and our Lord and Saviour, Alan Shearer. Something like that. Yeah.
That'd be accurate, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
With when I was doing this, I kind of did elimination and I got Bellamy and Callum Wilson just because I don't think they've got the quality of the others. And despite their, they've both been around for quite a few seasons for us. I was like you as well, Keegan. I did the 4-3-3 and I had Beardsley on the right-hand side of mine instead of Nobby. So that was one of the things I was wondering about, whether to put Nobby in. But I think I was doing it thinking like a modern 4-3-3, like the system will play now. So I had Beardsley on one side and I had Isak on the other side, even though he's only played 22 games. I just think he's got so much quality. And I think even though he's better off up front, I think he could easily play that kind of wide forward position in this team. And I think he's just got more ability than Laurent Robert, like more overall ability. And I think him and Shearer together, wow, that'd be something special. Craig, you haven't told us who you had alongside King Al.
Well, again, this is where I was debating to either go with Wilson or Ferdinand, because if you look at their stats, are actually very, very similar. There's not a huge amount of difference between. And Wilson's actually got better stats than Bellamy. And Bellamy played in a far more attractive attacking team throughout his Newcastle career. I mean, Wilson, he had Bruce for a manager for a kickoff. But yeah, it has to go down to Beardo, doesn't it? Just has to be. The little magician. We all know Lionel Messi wears Peter Beardsley pajamas to bed. So it has to be Peter Beardsley up front with Shearer. Those two together, two Geordie lads leading the front line, scoring goals for fun. Beardsley tearing the shit out of people, and Shearer just throwing elbows left, right, and centre, leaving them bloodied and bruised. And yeah, Beardsley and Shearer for me.
All Geordie forwards as well. What a strike partnership that is. I didn't realize that about Wilson actually. So he's only played 8 more games than Les Ferdinand, and he's got 3 less goals and only 4 less assists. So his stats are not actually that far off, which is crazy, isn't it? Really.
When you compare the teams that they played with as well, he had Keegan's entertainers against Bruce's boring bags of shit. Easiest way to describe him, because it wasn't attractive football we played under Bruce, not by any stretch. But yeah, the stats are very close, and his stats are better than Bellamy's as well. So he has to be regarded up there as one of our best Premier League strikers.
Right. I think we've done it all. Let's have a look at our teams then. Keegs, you can do the honours first. You can run through your team. You've gone in a 4-3-3. Yeah, and you've chosen Eddie as the manager as well. Talk us through this.
So just for those of you playing at home who didn't have a pen and paper handy, I've gone with Given, Trippier, Sharp, Botman, Byrne, Rob Lee, Bruno, and Joel Linton as a midfield, and then Salah. That's a nice trumpet emoji.
Little trumpet.
Shearer up top and Beardsley sort of on the left cutting in. And I've just gone with Eddie as the manager because I think what he's done with the players that he's sort of had at his disposal and the improvement that he's got in them players is like nothing I've ever seen before from a manager. And it's it was really tough leaving out, obviously, Sir Bobby and the actual bloke I was named after. It was really hard not to have him as a manager. So
don't show your dad this podcast; he'll be devastated.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, disown me. But yeah, I just went with Eddie because of the work he's done with not so much with the players we've got in, but the actual players that we had, and he's the whole coaching thing. And I love his work ethic and the stuff and how he's brought the whole club together, basically, like staff and players. And it's Newcastle United, isn't it?
Yeah. I think what I like about your team as well is that you could actually see this team, like if everyone was in the prime, you could see them doing something in the Champions League.
Well, that's how I tried to. I tried to pick it like based on if this team was going to play, like, and then try and fit it all. It wasn't just pick the best 11 players and
otherwise you'd
chuck
have
them on a
6
bit of
strikers.
paper. I actually tried to be a little bit methodical and put a little bit of thinking behind it, how it would all work and stuff like that. So I think I've got a good mix.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like that a lot. Craig, 4-4-2.
So I've got Given and goal, as you all have, and starting from the right back, I've got Trippier, then Woodgate, Botman, and Ollie Bernard. And in my 4-man midfield, I've got Nobby Solano, Rob Lee, Bruno, and Lauren Robert. And up top, we've got Shiraz, captain, and Beardsley alongside him as well. And my manager of choice, I've gone for King Kev. Purely the fact that, and this is again pure nostalgia for me, he is the most important man in Newcastle's modern day history. Without him, the club not be where it is today. And to me, that's a fact, and I'll argue till I and you are blue in the face about that. So that's purely the reason. Also played the best attractive football in the Premier League in Newcastle's period in time under Keegan too.
You just look at St James's Park, and that extension was because of Kevin Keegan and John Hall's money, obviously. But yeah, the extension of 52,000 that wouldn't have happened without Keegan. You know, the extension of first of all to 36,000 that it all happened so quickly in the 90s when the club was bankrolled by John Hall, and then. I think I'm a bit disappointed that you're not allowed to play 4-4-2 in modern football anymore. No one does it except I think Dyche did it at Burnley a bit, like when he had Chris Wood and and he had Ashley whatever he was called up front. But the 4-4-2 is just it's dead, isn't it? It's dying now, and that's a shame because both Keegan and Bobby's teams played 4-4-2 and they played it really well. So why do you think it's died out? Why is it gone?
It's just the nature of the game, and everything's got to evolve, I suppose. And if you're getting more people up top, then I don't know. I'm not a football analyst or anything like that to give such an in-depth answer on that one, but I think it is just the evolution of the game, to be honest.
And not only that, but now you have to have inverted right backs, and you have to have false nines, and you have to have double pivots and all that shit, don't you? And it's like, what happens is the 4-4-2?
Mm-hmm.
Get your players in a 4-4-2. Get some fast wingers who can cross it in. Put the ball in this Alan Shearer's head and let him score goals. That's the way it should. That's the way it should be.
Mm-hmm.
I think your team is beautiful on paper, but I think the reality of it might be that it might get overrun a bit. Go on, Keeks.
Yeah.
I was just going to say I have heard this debate before, but I'm keen to hear your two thoughts on it. With Kevin Keegan and Sir Bobby Robson, if you had to pick one to rename the East Stand after, which one should get it?
I'll go for, well, Sir Bobby's got his statue, so Keegan gets the stand.
Jed?
I agree with Craig. I think Keegan, I'm surprised it kind of hasn't happened. Or I'm not surprised because it was Ashley, but yeah, I think it probably would go with Keegan as well, and that would be nice for you, wouldn't it, Keegan, having a stand named after you at St James?
Yeah, if they could do it in the next couple of years, that'd be great. So when I go over, I could get a photo with it. But,
I was going to say, why a couple of years? Are you going to die? Don't die, please.
No. We're going over in a couple of years, so yeah. So that'd be nice. But I think this is, I don't know if it's a nice thing to say, but I think it's good to do something like this while someone's alive, so they can enjoy a bit like Man United have done with the Sir Alex Ferguson stand as well. I think that'd be really cool. And I know he has seemed to still distance himself from the club, even under the new ownership. And I think he feels a bit, he doesn't want it to be about him anymore, and he's had his time. But I think it's something that'd be great. I think every single person would get behind it and actually, like Craig said, actually celebrate him and have a lasting memory of his legacy at the club.
And it's interesting as well because like a lot of the youngsters these days won't really know about Keegan. Like I'm 37 and I can only kind of I've got decent memories, but I didn't understand at the time of the entertainers like how good they were really and the significance of it. So that's more Bobby's team for me. So a lot of the youngsters now, like they've been brought up on Mike Ashley. They won't know. Yeah. They won't remember about Kevin Keegan. So
their only memory was when he pissed off after Dennis Wise had come in.
And he came back for it.
That would be their memory of him. Like, oh, who's this bloke? But if you know, you know.
So let's have a look at my 11 as well. And I had a similar thought process to you, Keegs, where I went with a 4-3-3 with Eddie as the manager because I think in modern day, like I think I love Keegan, but he was so gung ho. Like I just don't think it would probably work for in modern Champions League. So. Yeah, I've gone with Given in goal, Trippier, Woodgate, Botman, and Beresford. Robley, Bruno, and Speed is a good balance in midfield, I think. Beardsley on the right. Isak on the left was the one I just debated over that. Isak or Robert, and obviously Shearer up front. And I think playing in that 4-3-3, there's probably a bit of recency bias here because we've just had a brilliant season with a brilliant manager, and we've been doing the podcast, so we've lived every moment of it and talked about every moment afterwards as well. But yeah, that's what I would do, and it's kind of got a balance of all players from all of the teams as well. It's got a decent spread of players from all the teams. So I had a little before we did this, I did have a little look at our teams that we had, and the players that we had in all three of our teams was Shea Given, Sven Botman, Kieran Trippier. We all had Robley and Bruno and Peter Beardsley and Alan Shearer. So it's interesting that we've all picked three players there from the new Newcastle United. How do you think that Eddie's team actually compares, like sizes up in total against both Keegan's team and Bobby's team? I'll go to you first, Craig, on this one. How do you think they'd get on against them?
I think if you were to stage a mini tournament, for example, so it was Keegan's Entertainers against Sir Bobby's Young Guns, I think they were called, and Eddie's High Flying Mags, it'd be one hell of a competition, wouldn't it? I don't think you could literally put your house on who you think would win. But you'd think Eddie's would do purely because of its defensive ability and the balance they have in attack versus defense too. Whereas the other two didn't really have that. It was more of a 70% in attack, 30% defense. So yeah, hats down to Eddie. I think he would win that little mini tournament.
And probably as well, football's kind of moved on a bit, and maybe we're just looking a bit too deep into it because it's just hypothetical. But football has moved on as well, so it's like the players are more fit now. But Eddie doesn't have Shearer though, and Shearer was just so outstanding. So Shearer against Botman would be a good battle. What do you think, Keeks? How do you think that might play out the teams against each other?
It'd be a great race, Shearer and Botman.
I would now.
Yeah. I was leaning towards Eddie's team. Not like you can't, like you said, you can never compare teams because with different eras and the game's played a lot. Like no one pressed back then. Like there was no such thing as a press. Yeah. Like get back in your half and get them. Make sure you tackle them and make sure they feel it and they know you're there. It's a whole different sort of thing. But if you just look at, like, it's still a great defense. Like forget about the way they attack, like that back four. I mean, Botman doesn't attack and Dan Burn doesn't attack. So two of them are just basically defenders. And Botman doesn't really attack either. So like, I know Shah does spray passes and sometimes he doesn't mind going on a bit of an adventure up the field. But they're actually a really good defensive team. And even when you stack it up against some other two Champions League teams, they'd be the best defenders that we've probably had and like we've spoke about. But the thing that tipped me over, and I think we had this conversation at some stage during the year as well, was they're great defenders, but like we were putting goals on teams as well. Like we were really attacking and entertaining team to watch this season. So not only did we have that defensive sort of mindset and stability, which them other teams didn't, we were a significant threat. And I'm not sure the exact numbers, but I mean, we scored a couple of fives, and I reckon maybe 4 or 5 for 4-goal games as well. Like they're not, like we were scoring, and when we were scoring, we were piling them in. So that's why I just leaned towards this team, because they had a really good balance of attack, but they could actually stop it as well.
Yeah. So both Keegan and Bobby's teams didn't get out the group stages. Well, Bobby's kind of did, but then there was another group stage because UEFA were doing what UEFA does. But so what I'm taking from this is that Eddie's Mags are going to basically win the Champions League, because we've got a good defense and we've got good strikers, and we're going to win the Champions League. Would anyone disagree with that?
No, and we'll have better players coming in as well.
Yeah.
So not just the ones that played last year, we'll have better, hopefully. I mean, we've only got 70 million to spend, so that might be maybe a player and a leg or something like that. So
and we'll have just spent 10% of that on an 18-year-old as well from Denmark.
Yeah. So we're down to 63 now, which is not good.
Anyway, that's been a lot of fun. It's good to kind of have a bit of chat like this in the off season while we're still waiting for the football to start. We've still got a few weeks till the pre-season starts. The transfer window is yet to kind of kick into gear for us. But we will be back. The Toon and the Pod will be back. We'll be taking you through the transfer window. We'll be having more chats like this as we go through the off season, and it won't be long until that Aston Villa game, first Premier League game of the season, and the all important Champions League draw, which is 31st of August, I think it is, in the calendar. So we've got that to look forward to. Thank you very much, Keegan. Go and warm up somewhere down in your freezing cold state.
Be jumping my electric blanket bed, I think, and just trying to thaw out a little bit.
It's definitely.
Do you want a quick update from Edgbaston at the moment? A quick update. We've got Joe Root has just been dismissed. You wouldn't read about he's been stumped. Gary Lyons thrown one up, and he's come running down the track, and he's completely missed it. And Alex Carey's taken the bails off. Craig's got absolutely no idea what I'm talking about here, but so I'm just stalling because they're showing the replay and I can't actually see what the score is. But he's getting Lions happy. Root can't believe it. They are 4 for 129, a lead of 136, and my Sportsbet account would love it if Brooke, who I believe is in now, can outscore Joe Root on 46, and my Sportsbet account will get a nice little boost come tomorrow morning.
I'm not officially Australian for another month, so I'm still.
You can go and get
Army. Yeah. I'm still with the Barmy Army.
Yeah.
All right, Keith, off you go and watch the cricket. Craig,
all right. Thank you,
you're
boys.
not going to go and watch the cricket, are you?
Nah, I'm going to high YouTube on and see if there's anything new on there worth good deeks.
You don't like cricket and you don't like cheese. Something wrong with you. All right.
Hate cheese.
See ya.
See you lads.
All right.